Hey girl, welcome to the Her Best Self podcast. I'm Lindsey Nickel, and today's episode comes straight from my heart and straight from a moment that happened just this morning, actually. And girl, if you've fallen in your recovery or you've had a setback, if you've slipped back in old patterns and behaviors, or if you feel like you're just not where you should be yet, this episode is going to hit close to home for you. Let's dive right into today's show. Hey girl, welcome to the Her Best Self podcast. I'm Lindsey Nickel, former competitive figure skater and perfectionist, turned God-led imperfect boy mom and digital CEO. If you find yourself constantly thinking about food and wondering if you'll wake up one day free from the obsessive thoughts and behaviors controlling your life, then I've created this podcast for you because I know exactly what it's like to be a downright hot mess trapped in a destructive cycle of disordered eating. I finally found freedom, and you can too, girlfriend. So if you're ready to heal your relationship with food and body and break the chains of control and show up in your best health, then grab your favorite Tarjay journal and let's get to it so you can start living your best life as your best self. Here's what I want you to know today, sis. Sometimes the fall, it's simply required. Not because I want you to get hurt, not because I want you to struggle, not because of anything other than the fact without the fall, we would not learn any other way. So we're talking about falls, we're talking about growth, and we're talking about being right where you are and why that might be exactly where you need to be today, friend. This morning, I was walking my 7-year-old to school today. We walk most days, but it's gorgeous. It's fall, the leaves are falling, and like most 7-year-old boys, he was skipping. He went to school in Crocs today, and it was full speed ahead with zero concern for consequences. And I kept telling him, Blake, be careful. You're going too fast. Can you slow down, dude? Can you slow down, bud? But you know what kids do when you tell them to be careful, right? They keep doing exactly what they were doing because they haven't learned yet. They haven't experienced that consequence, and because they have that childlike faith of like, I'm just going to go do what I feel like doing. And I love that. But then it happened. He fell, and it was very hard. He skinned up his hands, he scraped his knees, the kind of fall where you know it hurts because that's the moment of silence before any crying starts. And of course this is happening as we're trying not to be late to school, which just adds to the fun, right? Because we had to get ourselves together, and my mama heart broke for him. It really did. He reached out for me. I stooped down to his level, dusting off his little hands and knees and just checking to make sure that he was okay. And you know what he said to me? Through the tears and the pain, his little face looked up and said, I guess I shouldn't skip so fast to school. And in that moment, as much as it hurt my mama heart to see him fall, I knew he needed this. He needed this. And not because I wanted him to get hurt, but because sometimes we need to fall to realize that it's part of the season we're in. It's how we learn, it's how we grow, it's how we evolve. And as I walked back home after dropping him off, I couldn't stop thinking about how much that moment mirrors recovery. It mirrors life, actually. It mirrors all of us, but I knew I had to do a show on it today. See, in recovery and in life, sometimes the fall is required because without it, we wouldn't learn any other way. You can have people telling you, be careful, slow down, you're going too fast, or you're not being honest with yourself, or your actions aren't matching what you're saying. But until you fall, friend, until you experience the consequence for yourself, until you get the scraped up knees and the scraped up hands, you truly don't learn. And I know this can sound a little hard because I'm not saying that you must fall flat on your face in order to find recovery. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that I've fallen so many times in my journey. And one fall in particular, it did teach me everything I needed to learn. I was telling everyone in my corner, my treatment team, my family, my friends, that I was doing all these things, that I was eating, that I was following the meal plan my dietitian was sending me, that I was resting, that I was taking care of myself, that I was being honest. But in reality, I wasn't. Why wasn't I? It's not because I didn't want to. It's not because I didn't have the desire. It's not because I wanted to let down people that were my loving support team. It's because I was scared. But the results weren't matching my actions, and I felt so defeated inside. One side of me wanted to see weight gain because I knew that is what everyone wanted for me, and I also knew I needed it. And it's what my body desperately needed. But the other side of me, that side felt betrayed, terrified, almost like everyone was out to get me. Like gaining weight meant losing myself. And I beat myself up for not being further along than I was constantly. And this is something that I am in constant conversation with all of my one-on-one clients. I was so frustrated with myself. And I know many of you are so frustrated with yourself. I was so disappointed. I was so ashamed that I was still struggling after all this time, after all this money, after all this treatment, after all that I'd put my family through, after all these resources. But girl, that fall, it really was a turning point. Because once I faced the reality that I wasn't being honest and I was breaking my own promises, once I got really real with myself and I felt all those feelings, the fear, the terror, the shame, I could finally do something. It was like a weight lifted from my shoulders. I could finally do something. I could change even though I was scared. And I wanted so badly for a change to happen. But that fall propelled me forward in ways that smooth sailing is never going to. And you know what it reminded me of? Landing my first double loop in ice skating. And for those of you who don't know figure skating, a double loop, a triple loop, it is a jump where you take off and you land on the same edge. You're rotating in the air. And let me tell you, I fell so many flipping times trying to land that jump. So many times, over and over and over. At one point, I had an ice pack that was just clinging to my bottom side because my coach would tell me what to do. I'd watch other skaters nail it. I'd visualize it perfectly in my mind. And then every time I would fall. Every single time. Until one day, I didn't. One day, I crushed it. One day, I landed it. It was clean. It was beautiful. It was literally perfect. And you know what? It became my favorite jump. Not in spite of the falls, but because of the falls. Every single fall taught me something. What angle was wrong, what timing was off, what fear I was holding on to, what adjustment I needed to make, where I needed to get stronger. The falls weren't failure, friend. The falls were required education. And I thought about this on the way home today. My son had to learn required education that running in Crocs all over the place on top of leaves that have just freshly fallen is probably not a good idea. And recovery is the same way for you. You're learning a jump you've never done before. You're trying to land something that feels impossible. And yes, you're going to fall. You're going to fall multiple times. You're going to fall over and over. I'm not saying you have to wipe out every single time, but eventually, you're going to nail it. And when you do, it's going to be the favorite part of your story. Not in spite of the falls, but because of them. And this is what I wanted you to hear today. But I know if your mind, okay, that voice in our mind goes, well, Lindsey, okay, I love this story today, but I've fallen so many times. Like, I'm embarrassed how many times. I'm ashamed. I feel like a failure. How many times can I fall before I just completely toss in the towel and give up? And I see you. And I want to talk about that shame for a second because it is so real and it is so heavy. When Blake fell this morning, he didn't just cry because his hands hurt. He was embarrassed. There was people whizzing by us to school, like other kids were walking by. He felt like everyone was watching him mess up. But here's what I want you to know. The shame isn't about the fall, friend. The shame is about what you're making the fall mean about you. In this example from this morning, Blake's fall didn't mean he was a bad kid. It didn't mean that he was stupid. It just meant he was learning not to run. Your fall in recovery doesn't mean you're a failure. It doesn't mean you're not strong enough. It doesn't mean you're never going to recover. It doesn't mean all the progress is done. It doesn't mean you're not worth it. It just means you're learning. And can I tell you something? I eventually saw my falls as necessary requirements. I truly did. I really did. And I don't think I would have made the progress that I eventually made without falling multiple times over and over and over. Because each fall taught me something that I could not have learned any other way. I fully believe that. Each fall showed me where I was still holding on to control, where I was still living in fear, where I was still lying to myself or to other people. The falls weren't setbacks. They were set-ups. They were set-ups. And the same is true for you. So if you've fallen recently, if you find yourself, and it's like almost the end of the year and you told yourself, wow, I was going to do this thing in 25 and here we are, it's about to be 26. if you've had a relapse, if you've slipped back into restriction, if you've broken promises to yourself, if you're not where you thought you'd be, this is what I want you to hear. You are right where you need to be. First off, thank you for being here, listening to the Her Best Self podcast, but not where you want to be. I know you don't want to be here. I hope you do want to listen to the show, but I know you don't want to be in the struggle and the messy. I know that. But you're right where you need to be to learn what you need to learn to become who you were meant to become. You are. What I learned from my recovery and from the falls, from the moment when I finally got honest about not being honest, was that I was exactly where I needed to be. I couldn't skip ahead. I couldn't fast forward. I couldn't bypass the lesson. I had to feel it. I had to face it. And I had to fall. And once I did, once I got real and honest with myself and felt all those feelings that I'd been avoiding, that's when things could start changing. That's when I could actually do something. You can't change what you don't acknowledge. You can't heal what you will not feel, and you're not going to be able to grow without falling. And the fall doesn't have to be like sick enough. I don't want you to get it twisted with that. The fall, it isn't necessarily always this dramatic come to Jesus moment. The fall could be simple. The fall could just be something you're repetitively doing over and over that you don't want to be doing. Just like Blake's little face looking up at me through those tears. Maybe I shouldn't skip so fast, Mom. Sometimes we need to fall to realize what we need to change. And in that realization, that's the gift. That is the gift, and that's the growth, and that's where evolution comes to play. That is how you evolve. So how do you get up after you fall? I want to tell you what helped me in hopes that it can help you today. First, you have to stop beating yourself up. Because when you make the fall mean something about your worth as a person, that is disaster zone. The fall's data, girl. It is information. It is feedback. It is not judgment on who you are. Second, you get honest, like really honest with yourself. Then with people that are there in your corner supporting you, whether that's your treatment team, your support system, like your tribe of people, and you say, hey, here's where I am. Here's what I need. Here's where I want to be. I'm not there yet, but this is where I'm headed. Third, you dust yourself off and you try again. Just like Blake dusted off his little hands, you dust off your little hands. You don't have to get up by yourself. In fact, I was there for him this morning as his mama duck. But you should allow somebody who has been there, that has been at the place of the fall to where you are, to help bring you back up. And fourth, you take the lesson forward. Blake learned not to skip so fast. Now, will he probably do it again? Maybe, probably. He's a kid. What are you learning from this fall? I want you to think about your fall. Like, what are you learning? What does this fall need to teach you that you couldn't have learned any other way? And then, sis, I want you to choose to keep moving forward. Maybe it's a little bit slower, maybe a little more carefully, maybe with more honesty, but you get to keep going because that is a choice. And recovery isn't about never falling. It's about learning to try again over and over and over, building those reps, landing those jumps until one day you realize you've been walking steady for longer than you've been falling. You've been landing the jumps way more than you've fallen. So here's the question I want you to sit with today. How does this apply to your life right now? Right? I can share my stories all day long, but I want you to take something tangible away from today's show. Where have you fallen recently? Like, where do you feel like you have fallen? And what is that fall trying to teach you? Maybe you've restricted when you said you wouldn't. What is that teaching you about your fear? Maybe you're self-isolating lately when you said you would reach out to other people. What is that teaching you about shame? Maybe you've lied to somebody close in your circle saying that you're fine and everything's fine, but you know deep down it's not. What is that teaching you about your control? And here's the harder question. What fall might you need to risk in order to grow? Maybe you need to risk eating the fear food and falling into discomfort. Maybe you need to risk being honest and falling into vulnerability. Maybe you just need to risk resting and falling into the fear of losing control. What must you go through in order to grow? What fall is required for you to evolve into your best self? Because sis, sometimes we're so afraid of falling that we just simply get stuck. It's like we get stuck almost before mid-flight and we don't move forward because we're too scared to risk the scrapes. But staying stuck, it's kind of its own type of fall, if you ask me. It's just slower and more painful and a tumble, and it doesn't teach us anything. So today, I'm giving you permission. Permission to fall. Permission to be imperfect. Permission to do it right where you are, even if it's on the ground with scraped knees. You're not behind. You're not failing. You are learning. You are growing. And sometimes the fall is required. And as I was walking home today, I was like, these leaves fall every fall. These leaves from these trees, every spring they bloom and they're gorgeous, and then summer comes around, and then when it's fall, the leaves fall. And guess what? They're not asking permission. It's a season. The fall is required. The leaves dropping from the trees are required. It's change. It's required. So get back up, dust yourself off, take the lesson, and keep moving. Keep moving. And if you need support getting back up, I have a couple slots open. We're booking out through the end of 2025, so you'll want to go on out to herbestself.co and let me help you find your footing again. Until next time, friend, you really can break the chains of this. I want you to keep going, girl. The breakthrough's coming for you. Bye for now. Oh, friend, thank you so much for letting me share what was on my heart today. My hope for this podcast is to help more women find freedom from food and body. If this has empowered or blessed you, let me know. I'd be honored for your rating and review of my show, and I'd love to connect with you in my private Facebook community. You really can move from perfection to purpose. Let's break the chains together. I'll help navigate the way. Until next time, bye for now, girl.